Is going on, YouTube people? Today, another edition of the weekly sports card market update, Memorial Day weekend edition. Happy Memorial Day to all my US viewers out there. Nice, long weekend. Much needed. I kind of forgot I had Monday off work. Actually had stuff scheduled for work on Monday, like account visits, the first part of last week, and then I remembered, wait a second, dummy, you don't have to go into work on Monday. Ship Shawana show this week, and I will not be in attendance. There will be a trade night later this evening if you are in that neck of the woods. Show tomorrow. I have a local show next weekend up in Cleveland that I think I'm going to sneak into. That is actually, I got to check the location on that. I think it's at, spoilers, the Best Western where the cards were stolen. More on that in a couple of minutes. I had a local show last weekend, was pretty good. Started a little slower. I noticed it got busy, but the early morning crowd that was normally there took a little longer to filter in. It ended up being about the same busyness as it typically is, but it definitely seemed like it took a little bit longer to get warmed up. We are heading into that summer season. People have graduation parties, family vacations are starting, kids are finishing up school, wedding season, like the whole 9 yards. We are just in the early stages of that. So I would not be surprised if shows take a little bit of a hit. We typically, in years past, have kind of seen a little bit of a summer lull as people's attentions and, more importantly, budgets and wallets kind of turn to different directions than buying pieces of cardboard with men, women, or cartoon characters on it. So don't be super shocked if that narrative begins to come out a little bit. This is typically the slow period, next couple of months, and then it will build back up to the national, which, speaking of which, we are under 60 days. 2 months from now, we will all be cramming into a hot and sweaty airport hangar. Hopefully the air conditioning is on point to look at, once again, said pictures of men, women, and cartoon characters printed on small pieces of cardboard encapsulated in pieces of plastic that are judged by a third-party $15 an hour employee to assess a numeric grade upon it that then puts a higher premium on it depending on the little number that they decide to put on it, depending on whether or not their lunch was good that day. This is the world that we live in, folks. Let that marinate for a minute. But yes, we are under 60 days away from the National. Hopefully you have your ducks in a row for that show. I know excitement is definitely building locally for it. A lot of chit chat about the National the last couple shows I've been at with dealers. I was in a shop over the weekend picking up a case of Pokemon cards, talking about it, and just you could feel the vibes beginning to build up here in the local area with the National coming very quickly. And then that's going to kick off a slew of events because immediately after the National, we are going to have that Fanatics Fest in New York. Right after that is the Burbank show. And then we have 2 more Fanatics Fests to close out the year. And I believe 1 or 2 more Dallas card shows. So, crazy times from the show scene. We will see if, how do the Fanatics events impact the larger overall show scene? I think it's way too soon to say, but I think by the end of the year, we'll have a much better feel for kind of what those look like and the different styles of them and kind of how all that plays out. Before we dive too deep, channel sponsor, comc.com. Their non-sport auction stuff is finishing up this weekend for their big auction event. I have bid and won on at least 1 card to this point from that event. And I've actually picked up quite a few things on ComC lately. My shipment of cards has arrived. Processing has begun. Nothing's been uploaded quite yet, but the estimated completion date is June 6th on that. So hopefully I'll have a fresh batch of inventory. If you're curious about ComC, I did a video earlier this week, I believe it was Monday, where I kind of broke down the entire submission process for sending stuff into the old ComC. So if you want to go check that out, if you're curious about sending stuff in and haven't yet, and want to see how all that works, spoilers, it is a Very easy process. Very easy. Go check that one out. I also transferred a bunch of store credit out of ComC, paid 10% cash out fee to move a chunk of cash over as I begin to kind of get funds lined up. We got a lot of shows coming up the latter part of this summer, and listen, cash is king. So I am beginning to kind of shuffle things around from various accounts that they're in. Maybe that would be worth a discussion in a separate video to prepare for those shows. Just get up and go is not quite that simple anymore. You got to kind of start getting things in order a little bit ahead of time, and I've started the process of that as I potentially eye some larger purchases here over the summertime. Let's go ahead and dive into some news. An update, first off, the whole Optic nonsense. Good old Panini. This came out late last week. PSA was not grading 2023 Optic football because Panini never bothered to put a checklist out, which caused problems for PSA as, as a grading company. You really don't know what's on the checklist until you get it from the manufacturer, which opens things up for shenanigans. So PSA made a statement. Hey, we're not grading this. They gave some options. We'll hold on to the card. Their CRC center was reaching out to individual customers affected by it, like laying out some options for them. And they put this out on social media. It made the rounds on the Twitterverse, the IGverse. A bunch of content got made about it. And what do you know? The next day, because I think this all came out on Thursday, the next day, PSA announces Panini returned our calls. They gave us a retail checklist. So they got the checklist for the retail version of Optic, which is the one that's currently on hitting shelves. Hobby doesn't come out until later in June. Funny what a little bit of social media pressure does from large corporations. It was funny that PSA reached out to them and they refused. And then PSA basically put them on blast in social. And then everyone picked up on it and ragged on them. And then lo and behold, here comes the checklist going into PSA's offices. So PSA is now grading Optic once again. If you had cards there already, I am sure they've probably discussed whatever their options were, but everything should be good going forward with that. Hopefully Panini can get their stuff straight and get checklists out in a timely manner so this does not have ripple effects into other areas of the hobby. This crazy story we touched. I'll just touch on this if you want the full details. I did a video on it on Thursday. Fake PSA slabs, the FBI cracking down $2 million of fraudulent sales, probably more. Who knows how many of these things are still out there. The funny story here is the main culprit is actually a former bank robber that turned straight that was writing children's books, one of which including When Daddy Goes to Prison or something along those lines. Oops. You can't make this stuff up sometimes, folks. You really can't. PSA obviously just had an updated slab redesign. I saw some speculation that it had stuff to do with this. I don't know that it does because most of the slabs that I've seen that were getting counterfeited here were all older generation ones. They did make some security enhancements to the new slab, but most of the ones, at least all the photos that I've seen, and I've seen some that aren't even in the indictment, are old generation slabs that were much easier to fake. The newer Lighthouse ones are a little bit trickier, and I've heard the even newer ones are even more advanced. Speaking of PSA slabs, we talked about this on Off Centered. Flipping Steve tried to crack one of the new PSA slabs, and people in the comment section have been commenting on this. I don't have one in hand yet. I don't have enough cards to send in the PSA. I got a small stack building on my desk, but nothing. I haven't reached the 10 card minimum yet. Everyone keeps saying the new PSA slabs are an absolute. They feel great. They look great. They feel great, but they are nightmare fuel to try to crack. So be careful out there. If you're cracking those puppies out, don't damage any cards. We'll see what else comes out of this, if anything else shakes out of the woods on this indictment. But it's basically PSA putting the, I guess, bad actors, for lack of a better term, on notice that if you mess around, the old F around and find out scale, If you mess around doing shady stuff, at some point in time, it's going to bite you in the butt, and we're going to go after you. And we're going to do everything that we can to cooperate with law enforcement to go after you. So careful out there. Speaking of law enforcement, remember the 2 million, and 2 million seems to be a popular number lately. 2 million in stolen baseball cards from the memory lane auction that they listen. There was a lot of speculation about shenanigans going on here with the, what really happened here. How dumb are you? Memory lane auctions shipped $2 million in super high-end vintage baseball cards via FedEx to a Best Western in Cleveland, Ohio, where I'll actually potentially, I think the show is at this location next week that I'll be going to, or potentially going to. And they were signed for and then disappeared before they could be picked up. And law enforcement got involved. And this week they did make an arrest. One Mr. Jacob Paxton of Strongsville, who I believe was an employee of the Best Western. Little red flag. If you steal $2 million in inventory, I believe he quit his job shortly thereafter. Talk about leaving breadcrumbs on the ground. I believe all the cards except for 2 were recovered to this point. That may have changed since the story was posted. But those have been recovered. And the reason, so one of the other weird quirks of this whole story is Memory Lane let these items complete on auction. And I guess part of the reason, there was a lot of questions around that about like, wait, what are they doing? Why did they do this? This seems weird. I guess now, at least this is the excuse that they're pointing to, is they said law enforcement asked them not to pull them because they did not want the suspect to get the spooks that they, might be onto them or not. They didn't want them to get scared off and potentially run or something. I don't know. But they wanted things to run kind of status quo. So that's what they're pointing to towards that. Moral of the story, if you have $2 million in high-end vintage baseball, if you have $2 million in anything, maybe get in the plane and attach the briefcase to your arm and fly the stuff there yourself. I think that's really the big lesson learned here. Why you would ship those, I have no idea. The insurance policy, what you paid in insurance to probably transport those things around, you could have stuck them on someone's arm and flown them there probably cheaper. I would have to imagine. But what do I know? I'm just a guy sitting in a basement talking into a microphone that I bought on Amazon. Let's talk about charts and graphs. We've got a lot going on in the charts and graphs space. The NBA playoffs, though the Eastern playoffs have sucked, the Western playoffs are amazing. And Luka versus Ant-Man, one side of that is living up to the hype. The Ant-Man side, not so much so far. But before we dive in, Market Movers, link in the description down below if you want to check it out. There is a promo code down there for 20% off for life and a free trial. So go ahead and check that out if you want to play around with charts and graphs on your own. First off, we got to talk Luka. Hit the big game winner, step back 3. I should note, I am recording this prior to game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals. But Tyrese Halliburton is out, and the Celtics continue to get a cakewalk to the NBA Finals. But in the West, Luka is dousing the hopes and dreams of Ant-Man investors all over the place. Luka, game winner against Rudy, absolutely fantastic. Series has been fun. I hope Dallas wins. I want to see Luka, and I want to see Kyrie going back against the Celtics. Say what you will about Kyrie. He is when his head's on right, love watching that guy play basketball. It was a joy to watch him play basketball as a Cleveland Cavalier while we had him. But Luka has seen a little bit of a price bump, most of it happening in the last few days, but he has been slowly trending up. This is the last 60 days of silver PSA 10 and 9. 10 is up about 30%. 9 is up about 15%. Most of the 9 action has happened in the last few days. The 10 has been slowly creeping up as the playoffs have moved on. We obviously see the big spike up here all the way up to 15K, or I'm sorry, 1.5K. Came back down again the next day. If they end up sweeping, I don't know if they're going to sweep. I assume Timberwolves are going to get a game or two here. But it looks like if he could stay healthy, and that's really the key here, he looks really banged up in some cases, and then he's dropping step back threes over Rudy Gobert in the next breath. If they could get through here and play the Celtics, hopefully everyone is upright and we can actually get a good NBA Finals. The Eastern Conference playoffs outside of Knicks Sixers has been a absolute joke. It's been super boring. The games have been not that exciting at all outside of a few here and there. The West has been appointment television. I like when the Western playoffs have been on, especially that Minnesota Denver series and now the Dallas Minnesota series has been appointment television. I am making sure that I am not doing a thing and clearing out to watch those games because they have been so entertaining. So we'll see what happens going forward, but Lucas stuff is definitely on the move up. On the flip side, Ant-Man continues to yo-yo all over the place. He has dropped back down again. PSA 10 is currently sitting at just over $1,000. We could see after the losing 2 games in that series, they have dipped back down. We'll see if they end up, getting bounced in 5 or 6 or whatever ends up happening, where this thing kind of settles back in at. My guess is probably 800 to 900 ish, assuming what that's on the downside side of things, where he doesn't really have any kind of crazy game. They end up losing in 5 or 6, and he has to head home. He's been I'll just flat out say it, disappointing so far in the Western Conference Finals. He looks kind of gassed for whatever reason, and just has really not been playing super, super well. I hope he makes me eat my words on Sunday night, because once again, I have no real vested interest in this. I own one high-end Luka card, the Blue Mosaic. I own none Anthony Edwards, so if you want to call that invested, sure. But I'm not planning on selling the Luka, even if they win the NBA title. So I don't really have much in the way of a dog in this race. I guess I have a couple sealed boxes of Optic retail from Edwards' rookie year. But unless they really turn it on here, I think this card's going to keep trying to back down a little bit. You had your area of opportunity here if you really wanted to exit out of this stuff when it was going for 1.5, 1.6K, when it went straight to the moon, and people were declaring him the next Michael Jordan. Once again, and when I mean this, like the red rockets slope upwards, the to the moon chart going up, typically remains undefeated on what's going to happen there, and it is going to be a major backslide back. And like I said before, I think this is going to follow the typical pattern that we always see. The old floor price was around $500 to $600. It goes to the moon, things reset, and it'll probably settle in around an $800 or $900, maybe even $1,000 card, give or take, and then it'll probably sit there and just kind of float for a while, and that'll be the new floor. So the floor will be reset. There would have been a good time to probably exit out way above the floor, but then the breaks, things go up, things go down, and we continue to play this game of moving cardboard around. Tatum. Not much movement out of one Jason Tatum. He has had a very understated playoffs because, one, they really haven't needed him to completely carry the team. And he's just been kind of fine. His PSA 10 silver is up 10% over the last 60 days. Meanwhile, Jaylen Brown, and most of this is over the last few days, it's been kind of his coming out party. His PSA 10 is up 90% over the last 60 days. Then do keep in mind here, there is a pretty big difference in population. 2016 Prism, there is not a ton of. 2017, the pop on the Tatum is about 860. The pop on the Jaylen Brown is 280. So it takes less demand to shift that card because the supply is way, way less. And Jaylen Brown, I'll just say it, has played better than Tatum so far in this NBA playoffs. Now, we'll see what happens when they get to the big stage, which they are most likely going to do because, once again, the little leprechaun comes out and injures whoever they are playing on the other side. Kyrie Irving for the Mavericks, we mentioned him earlier. Kind of a weird duck when it comes to rookie cards. This is his base Prism. He has a silver, but at a super low pop, and none have sold recently. This is just his base Prism, and this kind of tells you his base Prism PSA population at a 10 is just under 1,000. So that is not a lot when you think of where we sit with like Luka and Zion base Prisms. So this is actually a fairly legitimate card, even though it's base Prism. Up 40%, both in a 10 and a 9. 10's going for almost $200. And once again, as I mentioned earlier, it is kind of fun to see him kind of back in semi-star / superstar mode again. Switch courts here and move on over to baseball. Go from a court to a field. A couple of guys having breakout performances, and card prices are beginning to reflect it in some cases. We're mostly going to talk about guys going up today. I think we might do a oh my god, what the hell happened to these first Bowman autos video later this week. Soto having an amazing season in my baseball keeper league. First year that we drafted, I took Soto in the first round. Now I can't keep him because of the way that the keeper rules work. It is a 1 round increase on where you drafted a guy to keep him, and so first rounders will not be able to be kept. But I took him fairly high, I think second or third overall, and that has been very, very rewarding. Soto is having an amazing season so far with the Yankees. His first Bowman autos are creeping up ever so slowly, nice, slow, and steady. This is this is since January 1st. So, and you can kind of see that steady increase on up as we move into the beginning of summer. PSA 10 up about 26% in the auto. 9 has been about flat, and a BGS 9.5 has also been about flat. And I will note BGS 9.5, the start point on that graph is the end of January, so it does not line up perfectly with the PSA cards. So do kind of note that. But Soto definitely on the increase on autos. On non-autos, I looked at some of his 2018 stuff, once again, going back to January. Little all over the place. The hands-on hips SP variation in a 9 and a 10 are down about 20%, which seems kind of odd to me. I actually just recently purchased a PSA 9 on ComC auctions. His gold out of 2018, PSA 9 up about 30%, PSA 10 up about 15%. I own that card in a BGS 9.5. I talked about famous cards on the channel, and that the Juan Soto green was one of the poster child cards for the channel back in the hype of the pandemic days. The pink Juan Soto would probably be on that short list as well. I do not currently own this card, but at one point in time I owned multiples. This card's sitting at about $375. No real change there. The reason why I always like that card is because Soto's rookie year is kind of weird. He does not have a lot of chrome refractors. So it's kind of a supply issue there, where he just does not have a ton of chrome refractors out there. And then the rainbow foil, last one sold in mid-April, so it's actually been a hot minute on this card. That shows is up 7%. I checked, so since one hasn't sold for a while, there's currently been sitting at 400. So I would probably put the next comp on that card around 350, 375 if no one's bidding a $400 card. And that's the last sale. That tells me that the real value is probably closer to 350, 375-ish. So that card would actually be down slightly as well. Now, some of these don't line up all perfectly. A lot of these didn't have sales until early January, where some of them, early February, where some had them in January. So do keep that in mind with the selective endpoint or selective start points here. I just started it from January 1st to keep it clean. But that is one thing to kind of always note whenever you're running charts and graphs, pay attention to that sort of stuff when you're comparing a bunch of cards, because some of these things transact more than others. So he is having a really good season. Some stuff is seeing increases, but it's not like double, tripling, going to the moon territory quite yet with one Mr. Soto. He is definitely on the short list for MVP this year. Another one having a tremendous year, one Mr. Kyle Tucker. This is his Topps Chrome rookie refractor auto in a PSA 10, also since January 1st. This card is up 75%. The key thing I want to note here, Kyle Tucker is really amazing. He's a really good baseball player, absolutely smashes the baseball. Look at the price of that card. A PSA 10 on card refractor rookie auto out of $499 goes for $325. Just let that marinate for a minute when you look at what some of the unproven kids go for, if you will, what rookie refractors will go to. If you said that, Churio or Holiday or whatever would put up numbers like Kyle Tucker, you would be like, oh my goodness, that would be absolutely amazing. And then you go look at Kyle Tucker's prices and you're like, wait, what is it? Wait, what? Huh? That only goes for that? So just gotta keep that in mind. That would be a dream season for some of these kids. His first Bowman, I was gonna look at that, but the prices were all over the place. It honestly did not make sense the way that they jumped around from sale to sale. Part of that is 2015. A lot of that stuff's in BGS slabs, so the prices are very wildly depending on the subgrades. There's not a lot of PSA sales, so it just didn't make for a clean chart and graph. So that's why I went this route instead. Next up, Gunnar Henderson having another amazing season. This is his 2019 first Bowman PSA 10 and a PSA 9. Also, since January, huge increases here, up 60% in his PSA 10, and the PSA 9 is up 55%. And he is absolutely murdering the baseball. He is having an absolutely fantastic season as well. Another little check-in, because I haven't looked at his prices in quite a while. One Mr. Ohtani. Obviously, he kind of had a weird start to the season because of all the gambling nonsense. This is his PSA 10 base refractor from 2018 Topps Chrome and the pink refractor out of 2018 Topps Chrome. Both those sitting at right around $500. And he is not obviously pitching yet. He is having a great season at the plate. Down ever so slightly. Down 3%, down 5%. So basically flat. And this is also since January 1st. Now, he did actually dip a little bit harder and has rebounded a little bit, but still not up overall, even though he is having a great first season with the Dodgers, but he is missing that pitching component. So the fact that he's holding firm, only doing one of the two things that he is popular for, is probably a pretty good sign. That is all I got for you boys and girls today. I believe I'm going to take Monday off. I don't think I'm going to record a video for Monday, so enjoy the holiday. For those of you that have served and do currently serve, I thank you all for your service that allows us to do this dumb stuff on the internet. Not sure what I got cooking for other videos this week. Like I said, might do something on baseball prospects. Prices kind of tanking for a lot of guys that have underperformed so far this year. Might do a quick little update on some sealed wax nonsense as I've continued to put my money where my mouth is. I spent about $1,000 on Pokemon sealed wax in the past 2 weeks. Actually, most of that in the last week. And that market continues to do extremely, extremely well. There's kind of a method to that madness and a science to it. So maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. And I am sure there will be your usual nonsense that pops up during the week that we will talk about as well. That is all I got for you boys and girls. We will catch you on the next one. Peace.